The diplomatic quarters of the Galactic Council Station hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 alien species coexisting in careful harmony. In one of the smaller observation lounges, Commander Velkoth of the Jarian Empire sat with his war council, their chitinous frames gleaming under the artificial lights. They had gathered to discuss the newest arrivals to the station, humanity's first diplomatic family. The humans were strange, soft-skinned, fragile, with eyes that seemed to hold storms. But it was the younglings that truly unsettled Velkoth, particularly the small female called Elsa. She couldn't have been more than 9 standard cycles old, with pale hair that caught the light like captured starshine, and eyes the color of Terra's frozen waters. She sat now in the corner of the lounge, supposedly under the supervision of her older brother Jixon, a gangly youth of perhaps 14 cycles who was too absorbed in his datapad to notice his sister wandering toward the veterans' gathering. "The Battle of Cressix IV," rumbled General Tharn, his forearms gesturing dramatically, "was a massacre. We sent 3 full legions against the Draxian horde. They had fortified the canyon passes, you see. Unbreachable, we thought." The other officers leaned in, membranes fluttering with interest. This was a story told to new recruits, a cautionary tale about the price of war. "We lost 60% of our forces in the first wave alone," Tharn continued, his voice dropping to a reverent hush. "The canyon walls channeled our troops into kill zones. Their plasma batteries cut us down like... That was tactically stupid." The small voice cut through the conversation like a monofilament blade. Every head turned. Elsa stood at the edge of their circle, her arms crossed, her expression one of polite confusion. Velkoth's translator implant stuttered, uncertain if it had processed the words correctly. "I beg your pardon, small human?" "Sending troops through a fortified canyon," Elsa said, as if explaining something obvious. "That's just asking to get killed. Didn't you have aerial support? Or could you have gone around?" Tharn's breathing spiracles flared with indignation. "Young one, you don't understand the complexities of—" "I'm 9, not stupid," Elsa interrupted. She stepped closer, tilting her head. "The Draxians were using the terrain against you, so you should have changed the terrain. Orbital bombardment to collapse the canyon walls would have eliminated their defensive advantage. Or if you wanted to preserve the area, a flanking maneuver through the Cressix Highlands would have taken 3 days longer but cost 90% fewer casualties." The silence that followed was profound. Jixon finally looked up from his datapad, sighing. "Elsa, are you bothering the aliens again?" "I'm not bothering them," she protested. "I'm just pointing out that their military strategy was inefficient." Velkoth's mandibles clicked together, a Jarian gesture of deep thought. "The highlands were considered impassable. The atmospheric pressure at that altitude is perfectly manageable with standard pressure suits," Elsa finished, "which your species uses for void combat anyway. I read the after-action report that Dad was reviewing last night. You had the equipment. Someone just didn't think to use it." General Tharn leaned forward, his massive frame creating a shadow over the small human. In his experience, such a gesture made most species retreat. Elsa simply looked up at him with patient expectation. "Perhaps," Tharn said slowly, "the human child would like to hear about the siege of Verantis. A tale to curdle the fluids in one's veins." Jixon stood up, recognizing the challenge in the general's tone. "Elsa, maybe we should—" "I'd love to hear it," Elsa said brightly, sitting down cross-legged on the floor. "Is this another one where you lost a lot of people because someone made bad decisions?" Velkoth found himself fascinated despite his better judgment. He gestured for Tharn to continue. The general's war story took on a different quality now, less boastful, more detailed. He described the Verantis system, the 3-year siege, the collective's use of automated defense satellites that had locked down all approach vectors. 23 assault waves broken against unyielding defenses. Elsa listened intently, occasionally nodding. When Tharn finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Did you try hacking them?" she asked finally. The collective's encryption was, "Yeah, but they were automated, right? Running for 3 years without maintenance?" Elsa leaned forward. "My friend Emma has this robot dog toy that's supposed to be unhackable, but after 6 months the firmware gets glitchy. You just have to wait for the errors to compound. Did you try listening to their communication protocols first? Finding the flaws before attacking?" Velkoth's translator chip was working overtime now. "Are you suggesting," he said carefully, "that we should have waited? Prolonged the siege?" "Not prolonged," Elsa corrected. Invested time in intelligence gathering instead of just throwing ships at the problem. Automation degrades, especially in combat situations with no maintenance. You could have sent in stealth drones, mapped their response patterns, found the weak points in their code architecture. She shrugged. Then one coordinated cyber attack and you could have walked right in. The officers exchanged glances. It was Sub-Commander Rixith who finally spoke, her crystalline voice tinkling with uncertainty. The human child speaks of warfare as if discussing a game. Chess, Jixon offered, finally joining the conversation properly. He moved to stand behind his sister, protective but curious. She's really good at chess, and strategy games, and basically anything that involves patterns and problem-solving. There was pride in his voice, mixed with the long-suffering patience of an older sibling. Last month she restructured our entire family vacation itinerary to optimize travel time and sightseeing efficiency. Saved us 2 days. I just think about things logically, Elsa said. Wars are about resource management and information advantage, right? So you minimize losses and maximize gains. It's not that complicated. Not that complicated, Tharn repeated, his voice hollow. He thought of the decorations on his carapace, each representing a campaign, a battle, a hard-won victory. How many of those could have been won with fewer deaths if someone had simply thought differently? Velkoth made a decision. He activated his personal data slate and pulled up a tactical scenario, a training simulation that his officers had struggled with for weeks. Human child Elsa, he said formally. Would you examine this scenario? She bounced up eagerly, peering at the holographic display. Her small fingers danced through the three-dimensional battlefield, rotating perspectives, checking supply lines, analyzing terrain. 43 seconds later, she pointed. There. You're thinking of this as a ground assault, but it's actually a supply chain problem. Cut off these 3 nodes and the enemy position becomes untenable within 17 hours. They'll have to retreat or surrender. The 3 nodes she indicated were auxiliary stations the War Council had dismissed as secondary targets. Jixon put a hand on his sister's shoulder. We should probably get back to Mom and Dad. But I'm helping, Elsa protested. You're traumatizing alien military commanders, Jixon countered, but there was warmth in his eyes. Come on, short stack. As the 2 humans departed, Elsa waved cheerfully. It was nice meeting you. Maybe we can talk about the Karis offensive next time. Dad mentioned that one took 11 years, which seems really long for a planetary invasion. When they were gone, the lounge remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Rixith spoke. Commander Velkoth, how does a species that thinks like that ever lose battles? Velkoth thought about humanity's application to join the Council, about the careful way they had presented themselves. Humble, eager to learn, aware of their newcomer status. He thought about that small human child with her matter-of-fact dissection of centuries-old military campaigns. Perhaps, he said slowly, they don't. Perhaps they simply learn faster than anyone else. General Tharn was already pulling up files on his data slate. Historical battles, legendary campaigns, tactical puzzles that had stumped military academies for generations. When Velkoth raised a questioning mandible, Tharn's response was simple. If a human child can see these solutions so clearly, imagine what their military analysts must be capable of. He paused. I want to study every human conflict in their databases. Every war, every battle, every skirmish, we need to understand how they think. To counter them? Rixith asked. No, Velkoth said, understanding flooding through him. To learn from them. Because that child just solved a training scenario that has stumped my best officers for a month. In less than a minute. Humanity isn't just joining the Galactic Council. He looked toward the door where the 2 humans had departed. They're going to revolutionize how we think about everything. In the corridor outside, Elsa tugged on Jixon's sleeve. Do you think they'll actually listen to any of that? Jixon smiled down at his brilliant, impossible sister. Elsa, I think you just scared the Council's best military minds with basic logic. Yeah, they'll listen. Good, she said seriously. Wars are wasteful. If they're going to fight, they should at least fight smart. And in that moment, Jixon understood what the aliens were only beginning to grasp. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tenacity. It was their ability to look at the universe's oldest problems and ask the simplest question, but why do it that way?